From Software have, in my opinion, the best boss fights in gaming. Whether it be difficulty, mechanics, spectacle, lore, or all of the above, the bosses in their games are always the best part. Now this list will be my personal favourites and will be judged according to the aforementioned factors. This will include all From Software games, so Sekiro, Bloodborne and Elden Ring are included. So now, with that out of the way, let's begin. Coming in at number 10 is the Soul of Cinder. I think Soul of Cinder is incredibly underrated, as he is one of the best final bosses of the series and a great conclusion to my favourite Souls game. He has many different movesets he switches between in the first phase, which always keeps you engaged, and you realise that he's using moves that the player had access to in previous titles such as the Cat Ring from DS1. He is a culmination of everyone who had previously linked the fire, and then when you reach his second phase and Gwyn's theme kicks in, as the Soul of Cinder calls on the Lord of Sunlight as a last resort, is such an iconic moment for the series. It is a great fight mechanically and goes in at 10th. At number 9 is Radagon of the Golden Order. Radagon is the true final boss of Elden Ring, as the less said about Elden Beast the better, although I don't think he's as bad as what everyone says, however I still think he's lackluster. But Radagon is a much better boss, and the starting cutscene where he pulls out the hammer and the theme starts playing still gives me chills. He is great mechanically and has a fun moveset with a good variety of attacks such as AoEs, hammer swings, grabs and throwing lightning with delayed explosions. The only problem I have with him is his low health, as he is a boss before the actual boss, so he is a bit easier, but he is still great regardless. Number 8 goes to Great Shinobio from Sekiro. Sekiro's combat is the most satisfying From Software I've made to date, and it shines with Ill. Now this placement covers both Ill on top of Ashina Castle, as well as Ill Fowler in Harada Estate, as I do not think they are too different from one another, except for the Ill and Fowler's fight. However, it doesn't change enough of the gameplay, so I didn't feel the need to separate them. He has long combos that are fun to deflect, and he uses dirty tactics such as fire bombs, poison, and can stop you from healing. As you go into his second phase, he baits you out by making you think he has given up, but then uses smoke and attacks again. In the second phase, his combo have slight changes to them, which makes you have to learn more moves he can do with different finishers, which kept the fight different enough from the first phase. His posture bar also depletes insanely fast, meaning you need to stay aggressive the whole time, which can be intimidating due to Ill's large size and damage output, but nevertheless he is fun and unique, which lands him at number 8. At number 7 we have Sister Fried. Sister Fried is an intense fight and the only Dark Souls boss to have 3 phases. The first phase is relatively simple, with backstabbing being overpowered and a limited moveset, however she still has some hard hitting combos and is very fast for Dark Souls 3's combat. Her second phase, when Fowler Ariandel gets involved, is really cool, especially the cutscene where he starts just going nuts and then Fried rises from the dead, but the actual fight is pretty easy by just smacking Ariandel, as Fried will be more submissive during this phase, mainly just doing ranged frost attacks. But phase 3 is when the real fight starts. You think you finished the fight after receiving a Titanite slab after the second phase, but then the boss health bar appears and Fried rises again, and this time it's Black Flame Fried, and she has even more attacks in her arsenal, as well as the Black Flame attacks that deal massive damage. She's balanced well with all her fast attacks and high damage, but having relatively low health for when you are most likely to fight her, making her an amazing fight. 6th place belongs to Ludwig the Holy Blade. Ludwig is amazing because not only does it show the best of Bloodborne's combat, but he is huge and has the mechanics and speed of any other smaller boss in the game, which makes it a fun and engaging fight. His design is absolutely insane. He's like a huge werewolf horseman with like 40 arms and eyes, definitely one of the coolest in Bloodborne. His first phase consists of large swiping combos that can be hard to avoid as the tails aren't too noticeable, as well as arena covering charges which can be difficult to avoid due to his large size. In the second phase he uses the Holy Moonlight Sword, which is revealed by a really cool mid-boss cutscene. The second phase is a bit easier, as his sword swings are better telegraphed, but he still has some fast attacks and can do massive damage if you're not careful. Ludwig is one of the best in Bloodborne and perfectly showcases his combat. 5th place goes to the Nameless King. One of the main reasons I love this boss is the lore. How he was Gwyn's firstborn son who left his side with the dragons and was cast out and forgotten in history, and then you see him for the first time atop a dragon, and then finding Ornstein's armour afterwards, insinuating that Ornstein did end up being reunited with the Nameless King after leaving Anor Londo, is a good moment. The fight itself is very fun. The first phase can be a bit dodgy with the size and movements of the dragon he's on, and especially the camera. However, the spectacle is great and the dragon doesn't have too much health, making it less annoying to deal with. The second phase is where it truly shines, however. It is a pretty easy fight with repetitive 3-hit combos and some lightning attacks, but nothing too special. However, it is a very rhythmic fight with good mechanics, spectacle and lore, which makes it really memorable and among my favourites. Coming in at number 4 is Knight Artorias. Now I know that Artorias isn't really hard due to Dark Souls 1's mechanics, but for me his lore is the main reason he's this high on the list. He is my favourite character in the Souls games, and his story is one of utter sadness and you can't help but feel sorry for him. It makes it even sadder knowing about Artorias when you have to kill Sif for the ring, knowing Sif is just protecting the grave of his master, not wanting anyone else to be consumed by the abyss. His fight consists of a few sweeping attacks as well as big somersaults which can do huge damage. He can also buff his attacks but can be staggered out of it, however requires good speed and damage output. Although he lacks mechanically, especially after playing the future Souls games, he is a special character with a memorable story and one of the greats. At number 3 we have the Orphan of Cuts. Orphan is arguably the hardest boss in SoulsBorne. The first time fighting him I was genuinely scared as he was so hectic and did massive damage. He has long combos that can be hard to dodge as his swings are very wide and can be hard to see. Parrying is a good tactic and can make the fight much more bearable, however it is very risky as if you mess up it will most likely be fatal. In his second phase he grows to like twice his size and ups the intensity. He is more sporadic now with a good mix of combos, AoEs and projectiles and is never idle for long. He is an intimidating and exhilarating fight which lands him in 3rd place. Second place goes to Sword Saint Ishin. Ishin is a wonderful fight with 4 phases which is intense the whole way through. It begins with fighting Genichiro again, which won't be too bad, as by the end and after fighting him earlier, he really isn't hard, but then Ishin makes a pretty subtle entrance and then the real fight begins. The arena is stunning with similarities to Gehrman's, with a beautiful view and a field of white flowers. Ishin has a vast moveset which makes him so hard to begin with, but is so fun to master just like pretty much every boss in Sekiro. Every phase introduces something new, and by the end you have to deal with the entirety of his new arsenal. The final phase is the easiest in my opinion, as his lightning attacks are common, and reversing them are easy which allows for good posture damage. It is an exhilarating endurance test where you need to be at max performance the whole way through. And coming in at 1st place is Slave Knight Gale. Gale is great in every way possible, and in my opinion the best boss From Software have made. His moveset is great and is my favourite fight mechanically, as he is the perfect fit for Dark Souls 3's combat. He is very sporadic, leaping around and doing long combos, however the first phase is relatively simple. In the second phase he gets an added mechanic of his cape essentially becoming a second attack which follows his sword swings, which is great design as it requires almost perfect roll timing to avoid any damage. His 3rd phase is when it gets crazy. He has all these orbs that chase you around as you're trying to deal with his chaos, as well as lightning that hits part of the arena making your positioning crucial, as well as a crossbow gun and magic rings. It is truly an amazing spectacle with great visuals, mechanics, and is the perfect end to the Dark Souls trilogy and comfortably tops my list as my favourite boss. That's my list of my 10 favourite bosses in the SoulsBorne games. This list was pretty hard to make as there are a few bosses that I struggled with putting in or keeping out, however this would be my definitive list. Thank you so much for watching, I appreciate it so much and would love any feedback on what I could do better going forward to make sure I provide the best content possible. Thanks again and I hope you have a great day.